The United States has entered into a new era of Trump tariffs. After the Supreme Court threw out many of the tariffs he levied last year, the president has gone a new route to reinstate some of them. There are tariffs now in place on Brazil, tariffs announced on Canada. Others are sure to follow. So how do voters feel about all this? With us now, CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten. So, what are voters saying about tariffs?
I feel like I'm in bizarro world, okay? Because the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and hope for a different result. And that is just simply put not been the case with President Trump in terms of the train has left the station and the American people have spoken. They hate these new tariffs. U.S. on new tariffs on imported goods. You know, you go back to November of 2024. Look, 52% of Americans favor him right after Donald Trump's election, 48% opposed. But then we entered the real world in tariffs, and Americans saw the effects of them. What happened to the opposition to new tariffs? Up like a rocket. We're talking 63% of Americans now oppose the idea of new tariffs, compared to just 37% who favor it. So the bottom line is this: the American people have seen what tariffs have done to the economy, and they simply put do not like it and have turned against the President of the United States, who, as I said, it feels like bizarro world, because from a political standpoint, it is absolutely insanity that keeps trying to do something that the American people clearly very much do not like.
Bizarre world also because there is a red sun, but that's another.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
All right.
Superman.
And the president's approval rating, how has it been? Or how has it sort of mirrored the tariff situation?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the tariffs were what set Donald Trump off on a pathway to nowhere, on a pathway to a presidency that is a dead end. Take a look at this. Trump's negative net approval rating. Every single poll since March 29, 2025, that is over a year ago, in fact, days in a row, it's 482 days in which every single poll that meets CNN standards for publication, Donald Trump has had a negative net approval rating. Well, what happened right around March 29, 2025? All polls just before Liberation Day 2025. It was the tariffs. It was the massive implication of those tariffs, the implementation of it, that, of course, many of them got overturned, that turned the American people once and for all against Donald Trump in his second term as president.
Went underwater just around Liberation Day, been underwater every day since. All right, how does the rest of the world feel about this?
Yeah, okay. So the rest of the world doesn't like it either. I mean, that's not much of a surprise, right? But still, it's notable, right? Net approval rating Trump on tariffs. Brazil, 51 points underwater. Canada, 65 points underwater. Mexico, 73 points underwater. Trump has been underwater so long on tariffs, both here and abroad, that the bottom line is this: it's almost like he is the Little Mermaid. He just doesn't even come up for air anymore.
And this could have a political impact in the other direction the president wants in some of these countries.
Exactly right. Take a look at Brazil. 51 points underwater there. Well, there's a presidential election going on there. Top chances to win the Brazilian presidential election. Lula, who President Trump does not like, he has now a 63% chance, while, in fact, Bolsonaro, who Trump very much likes, an ally, 25% chance. Donald Trump is killing his allies with these tariffs.
Harold Enten, thank you very much.
Thank you, Johnny.
We have a lot of news this morning. We'll be right back.
Financial Times is reporting the Trump administration is preparing new tariffs to replace a temporary 10% tariff that expires on Friday. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer was asked about the story. He says an announcement is coming soon and that the tariffs will be tied to administration claims of forced labor.
The FT reports that this would be much broader than just a small number of countries, that this would be a significant expansion. Is that not right?
Well, it covers 60 countries, 60, and about 99% of our trade. And that actually illustrates the scale of the problem we're facing. For years, again, the United States has had on the books this law where we prohibit the import of goods made in whole or in part with forced labor, and we enforce it rigorously.
All this comes after, as we reported earlier, the White House announced new 50% tariffs on a wide range of Canadian goods. Here's what Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said about his hopes to reach a comprehensive deal with the U.S.
That I'd spoken with the president. We agreed to intensify discussions. We'll begin that right away. And this is part of the negotiation. So the first objective is to get a comprehensive agreement that benefits, obviously, both countries.
President Trump has threatened separate tariffs against Canada in response to the wildfire smoke blowing into the U.S. Joining me now is Candice Lang. She is the president and CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Good to see you.
So first question, just a practical one here. The Prime Minister has noted that Canada has 30 days now to negotiate before the tariffs take effect. But this is not the first time, as you know, this president has imposed tariffs on Canada, some of them very damaging. Do you believe there's a path to negotiation here?
Absolutely, we believe there's a path, and now we have 29 days where, as our Prime Minister said, we will intensify those discussions. But today, Jim, we're still digesting, what are we looking at? What are we dealing with these new Section 338s? And I'll say new, but actually old, because they come from a Tariff Act from 1930. But they are, in fact, a very different tariff to deal with. There are three areas that are cited in which these tariffs are invoked, but how they work is that a pressure can be applied at a broader and more discretionary basket of goods that don't relate to those specific three areas that were cited, and in fact the reason the tariffs were invoked. So this is new territory. It's meant to offset discrimination against U.S. commerce. It does not include the lengthy investigation process that you see with 301 tariffs. So it's in fact a very different beast in terms of a tariff threat.
Do you think that the president has found, in effect, a new legal pathway to impose tariffs despite the Supreme Court's ruling? I mean, I imagine, these might be, you could see them challenged in court, but that doesn't necessarily move very quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, that doesn't help businesses in Canada or the U.S. that will be impacted by such tariffs. They are untested. This is Canada's the first to be processing, digesting what this all means. But as you say, the legal process will take a long time and be on a different timeline. So we're very much focused on the immediate digestion of what those impacts could be. But as you say, turning to, as our Prime Minister said, intensifying discussions, really stepping up those negotiations to get to a comprehensive deal over the next 29 days. And in some version of this, I hope that that's the spirit of the action taken here, is that it's meant to set a timeline, speed things up, if you will, and get things over the line in terms of getting to a deal that works for both Canada and the U.S.
Can I ask for your specific reaction to President Trump imposing tariffs for wildfire smoke? I mean, listen, the nature knows no borders, as we all know. Can you imagine Canada imposing tariffs on the U.S. if U.S. wildfire smoke went north?
Oh, I absolutely cannot. And in fact, when you look at what action Canada has taken in the exact scenario when it goes the other way, we send resources, we send aid, we send help. And that's what good neighbors do, especially when you have a shared geography. And it's, of course, what I would hope to see reciprocated.
Yeah. Big picture. I've heard from Canadian officials myself, and Mark Carney has referred to this in the past, too, in the midst of this ongoing trade war, imposition of U.S. tariffs on Canada, that this is not so much about coming to a trade agreement, but that it's about punishing Canada, in effect, extorting Canada via economic damage. And I wonder if you share that concern, or at least that fear.
It's a really, really good question, Jim. And I answer this question almost every day. How should we be thinking about what's hitting us and how we're approaching this? And in fact, I go back to last year when these, in fact, were very separate conversations. We had the review of USMCA or CUSMA coming up in a certain timeline, but we had the original actions out of U.S. trade policy being enacted, to which Canada had a reaction of, why are we being treated like everybody else? And what I mean by that is tariffs applied because we have a list of grievances and we want to extract some movement on those from all countries. And we have sort of this difference of opinion where Canada got upset because we were treated like everybody else. And out of the US, we might hear, why is Canada upset? We didn't single you out or treat you any differently than anybody else. But I, in fact, think the objective has remained constant, which is there's a list of grievances. Canada is included in that. These are made very transparent in the trade barriers report, and some things are added to that. Okay. And we, in fact, have to negotiate through that because those are presented as barriers to our trade and our trade relationship. And Canada's perspective is we also see barriers to our trade relationship, and we call those Section 232 tariffs. And so getting to a deal and a comprehensive deal for Canada means broader resolution on that level. And that's what we really hope to see happen in the next 29 days.
Well, if only that World Cup spirit, right, had extended into the trade sphere. I mean, it seems like only days ago, you guys, they were standing on the same stage handing out trophies. Candice Lang, we appreciate you joining.
Thank you for having me.